Guys, welcome back to the Miami Vice Monogram Ferrari Daytona Spyder in 1/24th scale build. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of things that I found. It's going to be a slightly different video as we won't be looking at the project car, but as a sample car so that I can explain an interesting aspect of this car, which I have found. Now, one of the things that I found of interest is that nowhere on the box or in any of the literature on this model will you find the name Ferrari. That is primarily because the car is not based on an actual Ferrari Daytona, but on the Corvette kit car used on the show. If you look on the box art, there are no Ferrari badges anywhere to be seen anywhere on the car. No prancing horses. No Ferrari badge on the nose, nothing on the steering wheel. Because legally they couldn't actually tell you that this was a Ferrari Daytona Spyder because it was a kit car. And if you look at the box literature, there is nothing in here about it actually being called a Ferrari. I thought that was interesting, as the only the only place you'll find the Ferrari name is in the decals. Nowhere else in the instruction sheet or on the box. Just an interesting little note there. Alright, let's go and take a look at what we're here for. Okay, here we go. I am going to show you first the assembly instructions. The first thing they want you to do is install the interior tub into the body after installing the windshield. Then you're going to install the lower valance. Then you're going to attach all the individual body components, of which there are quite a few. And I'm going to let you know right now that if you install the brake booster master cylinder assembly, you're going to have a few clearance issues with this fender, this wheel well. Because it's going to hit right here and it's going to move around a little bit. So you'll have to adjust that accordingly as you're putting the car together. At least I did on mine. So now, after you install everything, you're going to drop the chassis into the body, inserting the front end of the chassis into the front end of the body. And you're going to glue it to the bottom of the interior tub. Now, here on the instructions, it shows locating pins for the interior tub. Those pins do not exist. This is an original release from 1986, 85, 86. And let's find out exactly right here when this was released. 1984. Okay, this is an original release from 1984, which I purchased a long time ago and tried to build it when my skills weren't quite what they are now. Now what you're going to do is, once you've realized that there are no locating pins here, you're going to take the body and interior tub assembly. I'm showing you without the body here so you can see where it makes contact. And you're going to glue it to the chassis. Now, the interior tub is what's going to control the height of the body, as the body is glued to the top of the interior tub here. And once you glue the tub here, it'll sit only as far as the tub will let it go down. And that's what's causing the excess height in the car that gives you the improper, too high of a stance when the car is assembled. Because what you're going to want to do is, you're going to want to put your glue here on the frame rails, on the right and on the left, on all four quadrants of the floor pan. And don't be afraid to use, a nice amount of glue here, because you're going to need a strong bond to hold everything together. And then you're going to drop the body, you're going to drop it into the body and attach it to the floor pan here. Don't forget to paint the underside of the floor plan black, as it will be seen when you're looking under the car. Now, once you put this into the body will only sit as low as the interior will allow it. And the front will actually sit a little bit higher, because there is a tab here on the front of the interior tub which controls the height of the dashboard assembly. Now, when you install the interior tub into the body, when it has a windshield, this one doesn't, you're going to find that it's going to push down on the entire interior tub because the dashboard is up against the windshield. Now, what I do is I cut this tab off, which allows you, instead of sitting the dashboard up this high, to tilt it down this way, which gives you a little more clearance for the windshield. Then I notch this out a little bit further just to lower the dashboard just slightly. And that will give you enough clearance to allow the interior tub to sit up into the body just a little bit more with the windshield on. That allows you to get a little bit lower of a stance on the chassis. Not enough in my opinion, but it does work. I found this out from a great YouTube channel called Trekworks. He built one of these cars, and he also found the same issue with the car sitting too high on the chassis. It's a great channel. You should check it out. Boyd is a great model maker, and he does some really good stuff with Star Trek models if you're interested in that, like I am. Okay. Now, once you cut that down and you lower the dashboard, it'll allow you to sit a little higher up into the body, which brings the body down. Let me assemble this, and I'll be right back and show you what I'm talking about. Now, the first clamp I place is on the rear of the car from the gas tank and the trunk lid, and what that's doing is pushing the rear up into the body and just bending it slightly aft of the passenger compartment. This is forcing the rear frame rail up into the passenger tub wheel arch. And if you apply a bit of CA glue there, then what that's going to do is force the interior tub, the chassis, to glue itself to the interior tub, and that will hold it in place. Now, to make sure that you get all parts of the frame, what I do is I place one clamp on the rear and one on each side of the car to the rear of the doors, just to hold the rear section of the entire rear section in place and make sure that it glues itself square to the car. When you're done, you're going to find that the entire rear is now seated into the car and gives you the much better wheel spacing and a much more appropriate appearance for a Ferrari. Now, I do the rear first without gluing the front. Leave the rear to dry, make sure it's all completely cured, because you don't want this thing to pop out once you're done, because it will be under a little bit of pressure since you're actually flexing the chassis a little bit. So I would recommend using CA glue and let it sit for a few hours, if not overnight, just to make sure it cures completely, so it becomes one rock solid part. Okay, after the rear has completely dried, then I turn my attention to the front. I do basically the same thing. I put the clamp on, I grab the wheel and the top of the fender, and before I do that, actually, I apply a little bit of CA glue right to the edge of the wheel well arch underneath the fender. because this is going to be the only contact point that you have with the front of the car. And again, use CA glue to get the strongest bond you can, because you will be bending the chassis just slightly, which will put a little bit of pressure on it. Glue one side first, left or right, doesn't matter. Attach it with the clamp. Push up on the front suspension so that it pushes the wheel arch up into the fender, and let it sit. Once it dries, you'll have a very strong bond between the wheel arch and the fender, which, as long as you're careful, won't come apart again. Then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now here you can see the gap between the wheel arch and the fender. Let's see if I can give you a better look at that. There you go. That gap is what you want to eliminate. So you want to take it and glue that wheel arch right to the fender, and what that's going to do in effect is raise the whole front end into the body of the car to give you the proper stance. This is a little exaggerated right now because it's under pressure from the clamp. The wheel will straighten out and drop just a little bit, but the excessive wheel openings, wheel gap between the tire and the fender will be gone when you're done. And the slight little upward bend in the front chassis, you won't even notice, not really visible when you're looking at the car, and not putting enough of a stress on any of the components that you have to worry about anything falling off. So basically what you're doing is you're just slightly bending the chassis in the front and in the rear into the body in order to get the proper stance. I did it on mine and it worked great. Now I mentioned Lloyd on TrekWorks. He did, from what he described, he did it a little bit differently, but it worked on his also. He also got a great stance off the same model. So if the stance is important to you, and it is to me because visually I like them to look as close as they do to the screen cars, then I recommend you try this. It worked for me, it may work for you. Alright, well that about does it for this episode. Like I said, it's a little bit different because it doesn't really deal with the car that I'm building, but more along the lines of how I achieved what I did on the car. So I'm gonna end it here, and in the next episode we'll be back with the reveal video of the finished product. Alright, I'll see you then.